Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McKusick. We have a very interesting analytics episode. You should be watching this out on YouTube because there's going to be a lot of graphical content that goes with this. So if you're listening in your car, load up YouTube when you get home and you'll be able to see the graphical content that goes along with this. But we're going to talk about the situation that happened at the end of the loss to the Steelers with Zay Flowers taking the go-ahead touchdown in and the possibility of a kneel on that play. Before we go into more of the detail on that, let me introduce the guest on this who's done some outstanding work on that, and that's Rohan Panaparambo. I hope I've got that essentially correct, Rohan.
Yeah, exactly. Nice to work with you here, Ken.
Outstanding. Rohan and I have been in contact over the last few days. He's an MD, PhD student at Hopkins and has done an outstanding amount of work on this that you're going to see in about a minute that really looks at what were some of the options the Ravens had from a game management perspective at the end of that Steelers game. And you'll probably remember Zay Flowers caught the ball with no one near in the open, scored a touchdown with 2:20 to play to put the Ravens up 7. That's the play we're talking about and how the remainder of the game might have played out from that point. You've seen I've already talked about that on a pod as well as on a reaction after the game, but Rohan has a lot more specific information on it. I'll turn it over to you, Rohan. How would you like to introduce this?
Yeah, thanks. So I wanted to start by just sort of setting the stage with the play that would result in the Zay Flowers 64-yard touchdown in the fourth quarter. So the situation at the time of the snap, and can you pull up the slides here?
I can, yes. Let me do that. I'm sorry.
No
there we go.
Awesome. So the situation going into that play is there's 2.5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Ravens have the ball down 3 on their 36-yard line, and it's 3rd and 1. So I pulled 2 different win probability models. One is the Pro Football Reference model. They have a calculator online. You can plug in the time left in the game, down distance, field position, score differential, and generate win probability for any situation. Then NFL Fast R uses the set of R packages for open source football and data analytics, and they have their own win probability model, which similarly to Pro Football Reference pulls the same factors. However, it also allows you to account for the home team, the spread, as well, and it also takes into account the timeout situation, which is something that Pro Football Reference doesn't take into account. And when I say take into account, I just mean takes it as input. How that affects the model is a bit of a trickier question to answer, and especially in the situations we're in, it's a bit nebulous.
So let's be clear about this, because this is the most important point of all. So the Pro Football Reference model, first of all, does not include spread, which I consider a secondary consideration we're going to address later in Rohan's presentation. But the critical thing is it doesn't include timeouts. So in each case where you see a Pro Football Reference estimate of the Steelers' chance to win the game during this presentation, it's going to be an overstated probability of that, given the Ravens 3-0 advantage in timeouts that was true at the time.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm presenting these numbers as they're sort of spit out by the 2 models. It's important to come into that with the knowledge that we have that the Ravens have a 3 timeout advantage at this point in the game, and the 2-minute warning acts as a de facto timeout for the team in possession of the ball, which is not accurately reflected in these models. Okay, so at this situation, Pro Football Reference gives the Ravens a 31.47% win probability. NFL Fast R, depending on whether you consider the Ravens favorites, neutral, or underdogs, it ranges from 45 to 35. So that's sort of the realm that you're in. Very much a winnable game, but very much not decided.
And interesting that those numbers are so different between the 2 models.
Correct. Yep. Right. So we have to ask ourselves what are the underlying assumptions and how they might affect the numbers. But that's just the numbers at baseline. Now, after the touchdown, rather than spend a lot of time considering the win probability effect of the extra point and the kickoff result, I just sort of fast forwarded to the next play from scrimmage, which was after a touchback and a successful extra point, Steelers with the ball, now at 2:20 left on the clock, down 4, starting on the 35, 1st and 10. And pretty obviously the win probability is now higher for the Ravens in every situation. You've flipped the score, so always a good thing. About 30 to 40% increase in win probability, depending on the exact parameters and model you use. So it's important to consider what alternatives could have happened at this exact situation of the game, right? So the fact that Zay Flowers was 20 yards wide open is not something you can scheme for, right? Like when you take a deep shot on 3rd and 1, there's no guarantee that it converts and that you have this wonderful outcome every time. So if it was an incomplete pass, where do you stand? So you now be at 4th and 1, give or take 2:25 left on the clock. Same score. Pardon the typo. It should say 17-20, and same line of scrimmage. And as you'd expect, the win probability goes down anywhere from 8 to 10%. So in a nutshell, what you have is this play. So going for the fake out deep ball touchdown had a 3-to-1 upside relative to the downside, but it's hinging on what you think is the success rate of that play.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
so good stuff. And you have this in here as an alternative to another play on that 3rd down, another 3rd down choice that you might have made.
Okay. Correct. Yeah. So this is the play call that actually happened. Now, an alternative play call you could have made, which I personally wouldn't have taken offense to, and I don't think many people would have found particularly strange, is a relatively conservative run play, try and get the 1st down, fresh set of downs, probably take it down to the 2-minute warning and work from there. So let's say you call that play, you run for 4 yards. You're now 2-minute warning, 1st and 10 at the 40, 17-20, score is the same. Pro Football Reference doesn't love that play call. It kind of says the win probability is relatively unchanged either way. NFL fast R models do like that. They give you about a 5, 6, 7% jump in win probability, getting the fresh set of downs. I don't think many people would have had a visceral reaction to this particular play call in this situation being in the game, being the potential next state of the game.
For multiple reasons. The first is they would have said, okay, thank goodness we got the 1st down. But even if they really understood that the percentage chance and they believed in the Pro Football Reference model, it's not a big change in outcome in terms of winning the game.
0.5%.
And there are certainly, you can slow play a drive in multiple ways. You can slow play it by going for a run on 3rd down like this, or you can slow play it with a kneel, as you know we've discussed previously on this show. So anyway, this was a slow play yourself further back on the field.
Right. And that's a great point you bring up, which is if you slow play the game via kneeling, so with Zay getting the ball, having complete freedom of space to operate and effectively walk into the end zone, the alternative that came to mind for both of us and perhaps many of the listeners is, what if Zay took a knee at the 1, having complete freedom to do so and no one at risk of tackling him anywhere nearby, and then the Ravens now make a goal line push after the 2-minute warning. So that would be this situation. So you now 2 minutes left, 1st and goal at the 1, down 3. And the numbers again look really good. Just for people that are on audio, I'll recite some of the key numbers, which is Pro Football Reference gives you a 72.8% win probability, 2 minutes at the 1, which is 8% higher than the win probability giving the Steelers the ball as it happened in the game. So compared to what actually happened, Pro Football Reference gives you 8% more win probability starting a new set of downs at the 1-yard line. NFL Fast R, depending on whether you consider yourself a favorite, it gives you about 1%. It gives you 83.46 versus 82.55 for the reality. If you're a pick'em or an underdog, it's a slight decrease in win percentage, but it's similar. It's 80 to 78 and then 76 to 75. So just to say that this hypothetical situation that the Ravens were effectively gifted an opportunity to take without really any risk relative to what happened, maybe it stands blow for blow with what actually may have happened and maybe surpasses it. So
nobody's saying, by the way, that it's not difficult to get to ask a wide receiver. Flowers has had some specific instances where he's been at the nexus of decisions over his 3 seasons in the NFL. But nobody's saying it's not difficult to get a receiver to kneel in that situation. But the Ravens do have a code word they can put in the huddle for exactly that thing. In fact, I asked that question of John Harbaugh the last time I was at camp on August 13th. So there is a way for the Ravens to get that word in the huddle and tell Zay actually kneel at the 1.
Correct. So we wanted to dive deep into this scenario and see how the game could have played out if this was the course taken by the Ravens. So just repeating the information from the previous slide, you're at the 1 yard line, 2 minute down after the 2 minute warning, 1st and goal, down 3. And here I'm just using the Pro Football Reference numbers to show one set of numbers. The win probability is 72.8%. At this point, you have a decision to make, which is, well, you have two outcomes that can happen. You can either score or you don't score. If you score, we're going to assume a couple seconds fall off the game clock, and then we're just going to fast forward back to a post extra point, post touchback Steelers drive. And paradoxically, the win probability goes down from 72.8 to 64.91%. So about an 8% decrease that I talked about before. Now, if you don't get a touchdown, and here I've modeled that very conservative, which is you give up the down, you give up a yard, and you give up 40 seconds, which is effectively a QB kneel on 1st and 10 from the 1, putting you at 2nd and goal from the 2. Your win probability ticks up a slight bit to 74.47. So that's about 1.5% increased win probability.
Now, I just want to say, I love the way you modeled that there, because it's very conservative, as you say, that you're taking a kneel for a loss of 1, as opposed to running the ball into the line for a gain of 0. And one of the things we actually have seen happen there was one game where it happened recently, the Browns might have actually been involved, where they dragged somebody, it might have been the Chargers, into the end zone for a touchdown on a play where they did not want to score. So you'd have to be a little bit concerned about that. Now, of course, you'd have some ability to determine your point of getting down, but it can be difficult. So I like the way you've done it conservatively to lose a yard on the play. And then the 5-second reduction is interesting here, because I would not expect that to result in that sort of a change in win probability. So it goes down very significantly by about 8 percentage points. And that already has what I would call some conservatism built into. I don't know if we want to talk about this or later, but in terms of let's save that for later. Okay. Anyway, I'll let the results stand as they are, and I want to hear what you have to say.
Sure. So now you're on 2nd down with a 74.5% win probability, give or take, according to PFR. And now let's see what happens. If you score the touchdown, again, you drop 5 seconds and then give them the ball. We're just, for sake of a completely controllable outcome, we're just going to fast forward to the touchback, which is something you can more or less guarantee if that's what you're going for. Now your win probability ticks down slightly to 73%, whereas if you don't score the touchdown, and again, this is very conservatively modeled as another yard loss, whether it's a kneel or whether it's an attempted run that gets broken up or stuffed before the line, you now drop to 66.11%, which is a roughly 8% decrease in win probability, but still higher than what actually transpired, which is giving the Steelers the ball at 2:20.
So you're saying 66.11% is higher than 64.91%. Oh, no. Well, it's higher than...
It's actually even, yeah.
What is that number, just so for comparison purposes?
Just quick skip back. It is 64.39. And that, so I would say this is an underestimate of the change in win probability. Losing the 2-minute warning is a key point.
Okay, so and it's about 2 percentage points higher in terms of win probability, and we think it also is conservative in terms of the win probability estimate because of the lack of timeouts that the Steelers had, and the fact that this model doesn't factor for that.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, and then the final point is now on 3rd down. If you score the touchdown, you get a huge payoff here, because that leverage that you have of whether or not the score flips matters more and more as the time left on the clock decreases. So now if you score the touchdown, you jump all the way up to an 81.67% win percentage, which is a swing of 15 points and even more than that compared to what actually transpired. If you can create the situation. This is not necessarily guaranteed, right? But it's just food for thought. And if you don't get the touchdown on third down, there's a whole separate discussion, which we won't get into today, of whether you go for it or whether you kick the field goal and play for overtime. And that's going to depend on a lot of other factors, such as hypothetical penalties, sacks, like really bad outcome plays, and then just sort of the general question of, if you're down 7 and you score a touchdown at the end of the game, do you kick the field goal for overtime guaranteed? Well, assuming you make the extra point, or do you go for 2 and go for the win right there, as the Ravens have done in certain situations, going back to Buffalo last year.
Yeah.
Plenty of games in, I think, 2020 when Lamar was injured. There were a couple of games like that.
Yeah, 20 and 21 and 22. You're absolutely right. 21 in particular. But Rohan, let's talk about this here, because a lot of people will bring up exactly this. Well, if you take a knee, all these things could go wrong. You get sacked. You have a false start penalty. You could use all of that should be built into these model numbers on the left-hand side of this. So the 72.8, the 74.47, the 66.11%, they're much lower percentages than like simple tush-push math without a penalty involved would give you. These are worse numbers. Meaning these outcome, these percentage chances. So that conservatism is all built into what Rohan has done here, is my point here. And also, I would look at the field goal and overtime thing, or the going for it, as residual value. It's fallback value. You have a good chance to get overtime, maybe a 50% chance to win. That might be realistic. You have a good chance to, if it's the optimal play, still to go for it, maybe from the 1 yard line. And again, Rohan made the good point. We're not considering that for this presentation. And when we get over to the right side, I think that the 81.67% there with 35 seconds to go means the Steelers have an 18% chance to score a touchdown within 35 seconds. That is massively overstated, that they would have an 18% chance to score a touchdown in that time, largely because of the timeout difference.
Correct. Yeah. So based on what Ken has illustrated, right, the absolute value of these numbers is not necessarily something we're going to take as gospel, right? We should hedge that based on the model itself makes assumptions, which may be correct in certain situations and not in other situations. Like, this is a very niche situation, right? End of game decision making, the score differential matters a lot, the time on the clock matters a lot, the timeouts, which aren't being accounted for, matter a lot.
Every day, companies you've never heard of are making millions off your personal data. Your name, address, phone number, even details about your family are pulled from public records on the internet, then sold without your consent. There's an entire marketplace built on your privacy, and most people have no idea it exists. Aura fights back. Aura removes your personal data from broker sites and keeps it off. Aura also alerts you fast if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura is more than just a data broker removal system. It's a full digital security suite that protects every part of your online life. Aura gives you a VPN to stay private, antivirus to block threats, a password manager for safer logins, and spam call protection to shut down scammers. Aura scans the dark web for your most sensitive information and notifies you instantly if anything is exposed. And if your identity is ever stolen, you're backed by up to $5 billion in insurance and 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other service charges about the same, but only cover 1 or 2 areas. Aura gives you everything: data broker removal, identity and credit monitoring, device protection, and fraud support, all in one simple app. Aura removes what's already exposed, protects what's not, and puts you back in control. Go to aura.com/remove for complete digital protection and peace of mind. That's aura.com/remove.
Let me tell you about the online cannabis company that's changing the game, Mood.com. They created an entirely line of functional gummies, 100% federally legal THC blends, discreetly delivered right to your doorstep. And here's the best part. You can get 20% off your first order at Mood.com with the promo code Ravens. Now, I've tried a bunch of their gummies myself. Each one's totally unique. The Sleepy Time gummies knock me out right away. They help me unwind fast, leave me refreshed the next morning. The Epic Euphoria gummies, they're perfect for when your day just isn't going the way you want it to go. What makes Mood special is how they pair the THC with natural herbs and adaptogens. You won't find blends like this at any local shop. They've got gummies designed for focus, relaxation, clarity, even energy, all made from cannabis grown on small, family-owned American farms. No pesticides, no shortcuts, just high-quality weed you can trust. Plus, Mood backs everything with a 100-day satisfaction guarantee. So head on over to mood.com, check out their amazing selection, and don't forget to use the promo code RAVENS at checkout to save 20% off your first order. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. The new year doesn't have to mean a whole new you. Sometimes it's just about feeling a little less burdened. And one thing, for instance, I'm working on is letting go of that constant pressure to have everything figured out. Like I need to be perfect or I am behind if I'm not. Therapy can help you identify what's weighing you down or holding you back by giving you an unbiased perspective so you can better understand your relationships, your motivations, and your emotions. And BetterHelp makes it easy to get matched online with a qualified therapist. Their therapists are fully licensed in the U.S. and work according to a strict code of conduct. They also do initial matching work for you so you can focus on your goals. You'll fill out a short questionnaire. With their experience and strong matching process, they typically get it right the first time. And if you're not happy with your match, you can switch to a different therapist at any time from tailored recommendations. BetterHelp makes it easy to get matched online with qualified therapists. Sign up and get 10% at betterhelp.com. That's betterhelp.com.
The status on the field, whether you like your offense more, whether you like your defense more, these types of things all matter. So it's not to take these numbers just as is as fact, but to use them. And I think what's in some ways more important is to consider the trends. So given that the model itself has its assumptions, so it comes with perhaps some flaws, some baggage, but within the set of the assumptions made by your model, how do changes in the game state then correspond to changes in win percentage, I think is something that is somewhat more robust to analyze. So to look at that, I just kind of simulated a bunch of different situations. Not all would have been achievable in this game, but kind of adjacent to the situations that were achievable in this game to get a trend of how factors like the down, the time, they affect the win probability. And so for the PFR model, that is shown on this plot here. So to orient people, the x-axis is the time remaining in the game. So I started simulating conditions at 3 minutes left in the game, and I went all the way towards as low as 3 seconds left in the game. So basically trying to see it out to the end of the game. Although modeling stuff with 1 second in the game is not super reliable. And then on the y-axis is the Ravens win probability. So regardless of who has the ball, I've flipped the math as needed to look at the Ravens win probability. So now there's 3 colored lines. The red line is Ravens first and goal from the 1 at the given time remaining on the game clock. The green line is second and goal from the 2. The blue line is third and goal from the 3. The black line is the Steelers now starting their drive on a touchback, which is not necessarily the optimal outcome. It's just one outcome that you can push yourselves towards with relative certainty, is that you can give them a touchback and have them start at 35. And as you'd expect, the more time the Steelers have the ball, the lower Ravens win probability is. So this is a line that starts to trend up, especially after the 2-minute warning. And the Ravens win probabilities have a little bit of a hump around 80 seconds, and then it starts to go down. But what is the most interesting takeaway of this graph is whenever the touchdown gets scored, if the touchdown gets scored, you immediately jump from wherever you are on one of the 3 colored lines to the black line in the same sort of vertical line. So what that means is if you are on a colored line above the black line, scoring the touchdown moves you down in terms of win probability. And if you're below the black line, then scoring a touchdown moves you up in terms of win probability. So another way to put that is in this interval of roughly 120 to 80 seconds left in the game, the threat of an imminent or expected touchdown buys you more leverage than actually scoring the touchdown, taking sort of the suspense out of it and giving the ball to the Steelers offense. And then past where these lines intersect, you're now taking on risk, where the risk of not getting a touchdown causes your win probability to go down. But if you're able to overcome that risk and succeed in scoring a touchdown, you actually get a huge payoff as far as win probability goes. So there you have a lot of volatility, but if you're taking a risky approach to the game, which sometimes risk is good when taken in a calculated way, allows you to maximize win probability.
So let me explain this maybe a slightly different way than you got it, Rohan. And this is going to be meaningful to people who are looking at this on YouTube. So once again, if you're listening in your car, appreciate it. If you're looking on your phone or on YouTube, you're going to get a better sense of this. Anytime where the red line, anytime where the colored line, where the Ravens have control of the football in those three circumstances, is above the black line, then you've got a situation the Ravens can leverage for more win probability. We also think the black line has been conservatively estimated based on the fact that getting the ball at the 35-yard line is a suboptimal but available choice of the kicking team, that they would, kick the ball directly into the end zone or out of the end zone. It's available to the other team. Now they can make mistakes too, and we've seen Luke make some this year when they try to shorten up kicks, not made a landing zone and start at the 40 or kick the ball out of bounds. But they have this in theory as a fallback position, that black line. We also think the black line, remember, is overstated in this game because we think that the impact of timeouts is not properly reflected upon it.
Yeah, that's a great point. One sort of basic estimate for a timeout is about 3% win probability. So if these models were accurately accounting for timeouts, you would expect to see a 3% bump whenever the line crosses the 2-minute warning, which isn't there, suggesting that that's not really being appropriately accounted for. But all of these points do kind of suggest that the data being shown here may be still a conservative estimate of the reality of the game management decision. So this is the Pro Football Reference numbers. I also did this using the NFL Fast R numbers in the situations we showed earlier. So this is the situation where the Ravens are coming in as 4-point favorites, which is close to the actual spread for this game, the closing spread for the game. And you can see some of the same features are present in this graph. The degree of overlap is not the same, but you can see some of the same features where the Ravens possessing the ball in this 1 minute region remaining does have a little bit of a hump in win probability, suggesting you can leverage possession of the ball in those time intervals for win probability. And the Steelers' win probability decreases as you give them the ball with less and less time, much like the previous graph. Again, suggesting that the less time they have to operate their 2-minute drill or 1-minute drill, the lower their win probability is. Because of the 4-point favorite applied here, the NFL Fast R really does not give the Steelers great odds sort of across the board. They're saying even with 2.5 minutes, their probability of scoring a touchdown, they're giving it only about 15%, which is admittedly kind of conservative on that front.
Kind of aggressive from the Ravens' point of view, that we would have thought watching the game that the Steelers' chance to score a touchdown with 2 minutes and 20 seconds left was significantly higher than 15%. I think most Ravens fans, at least in their own fearful hearts, would have felt that way.
Yeah, I certainly did. So just kind of going through the other versions of this is if you treat the game as a pick'em. So everything kind of shifts down and the degree of overlap decreases. So in this case, there is some underlying noise to the data, but in this case, there's no longer an overlap between possessing the ball and giving up the ball. And then finally, if you treat the Ravens as 4-point underdogs, you again lower everything further and kind of keep the lines discrete. And so, go ahead, Ken.
I just want to make the point that if you're not looking at these lines, the one thing, and I think Rohan, I might be just stealing his thunder here, but the relativity of the lines is the same in all cases, meaning the black line has the same shape to it. The Steelers' chance to score a touchdown where it reduces with time, and the Ravens' possession lines have a hump right around 1 minute in terms of maintaining possession, and all have the expected relationship, whether it's first and goal from the 1, second and goal from the I think that's second goal from the 2, third and goal from the 3, right?
In this case, it's from the 1.
Oh, it's in these cases they're from the 1. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So expected shape.
Yeah. So the question, as you're alluding to here, kind of becomes when you're on the field making this decision, what do you see as your odds given a certain way? So sort of based on the game flow of that game, where the Steelers did have a little bit more momentum in the second half. The defense was tired, having defended against some long drives, whereas the Ravens' 2 touchdown drives were very short in this case. Well, the one that happened was very short. The one that were hypothetically not happening here ends up being short the way it happened, but maybe you stall it out a bit and give your defense more time to catch their breath. The defense was also out Kyle Hamilton at this point in the game. Wiggins was out for part of the previous drive, whereas your offense is operating for the most part at full strength and moving the ball well. So
the point being that an important choice had to be made whether the Ravens wanted their offense or the defense to win the game for them.
Right.
And the defense, a single point spread does not reflect accurately the difference in at that point in the game valuation of the Ravens offense and defense respectively.
Right. And so one way that I chose to model this was if we treat the Ravens offense, so if the Ravens have the ball, we treat them as 4-point favorites. And if the Steelers have the ball, we treat the Ravens as 4-point underdogs, suggesting that the defense is a unit we are not putting as much trust into at this particular game state. We can kind of superimpose the Steelers graph, given that their offense might be favored into our defense more so than the offense when the Ravens have the ball being a little bit more favored into the Steelers defense. And you do kind of see a very similar overlap that Pro Football Reference had, and personally what I believe to be close-ish to the maybe true scenario here, where having the ball on first down and even on second down, taking a knee on first down may be one of the most efficient paths to victory. Understanding that not taking a guaranteed touchdown confers risk, but also understanding that giving up the ball confers risk. And that,
that's a great point, Rohan. And that's something that I think people just don't get. All paths have risk, folks. All paths have risk. So you give the ball back to them, you take risk. You take a knee, it has risk.
Right. Yeah. And another thing to think about is also the kind of the redraw value of as it played out, the Ravens were able to get a second drive in. Now you can't guarantee anything on that drive necessarily, depending on how, but you have 3 timeouts, so you do have an ability to control the clock even on defense. All of that is baked into some degree into the win probabilities, although it's never going to be perfect, especially in high leverage situations. But that's something probably worth discussing a little bit as well.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, the redraw value is one of the elements that I wanted to hit on, is that, the Ravens did end up having redraw value in the situation where they allowed a return touchdown to the Steelers, and they ended up, basically blowing that redraw value on the Luke missed kick. That's unfortunate. And they did certainly get some miraculous play from Lamar Jackson to take him down the field on that last drive. But they had an opportunity for more clock control at the 2-minute point where they could have taken that knee.
Right. And so, and I think that scenario has manifested in several games this season, where you could almost say that the Ravens offense was too explosive.
Yes.
Certainly Buffalo, that was, so there is a little bit of a question there about when it's important, not just for the offense, but also for the sake of the defense, is to pump the brakes, play the clock, win time of possession, not get outsnapped, right? So I think for a mixture of those reasons, I found that this path is perhaps an appealing alternative to what actually transpired.
All right, I can see already the med school student desire not to make the choice about the data, but I'm going to force you into a call here. You're the man on the headset who has to make the decision. Do you have the code word in the huddle for Zay? That's number one, to tell him to go down at the 1.
Yes.
Okay. And next time for a second, you have first and goal at the 1. Do you take a knee either for no gain or a loss of 1? Either one.
I like taking a knee on first and goal, understanding that I might be fired if it doesn't work out.
Yes. If you're going to be fired when you lose the game, if you already have that hanging over your head, you might want to try and maximize your chance of winning the game.
Yeah. Well, I mean, which is sort of as an aside, an interesting social phenomenon in and of itself. You should try and maximize your chance of winning the game, regardless of how hot your seat is. But unfortunately, coaches in general may play it safe because they don't want to look like a fool.
Yeah, they do have employment risk that they take into consideration. And honestly, I don't care how many guys, say it was the wrong decision. Belichick on his 4th and 2 decision years ago, we were very famous. You may be too young for that, Rohan, if you remember this, but this is about 2007, I think this occurred. He was in a game against Indianapolis. They were at their own 29-yard line on 4th and 2. He went for it. It's completely the correct decision by any kind of modern football math kind of thinking. But at the time, it was like, oh, my God, what are you doing kind of thing. And he stood up there, took questions about that, kept saying on to Cincinnati, and about what they're going to say.
Oh, okay, that game. Yeah.
Yeah. He was a player who had a lot of currency. He was a coach, who had a lot of currency in the bank, and he wasn't fearful about his job. And if you talk about which coaches might take these risks, I think in that era, it was certainly the guys who had long tenures. In this era, a whole lot of new coaches, Campbell and Staley of the Chargers and whatnot. Just that's part of what they brought to the job.
Right.
At first principles was a aggressive 4th down approach that was good math.
Yeah, I think the more aggressive 4th down approach in general is spreading across the league, and mathematically it does check out that teams have been in the past overly conservative on 4th down. So it's interesting to see that play out, and the pendulum may swing as well as defenses adapt and so on and so forth.
Okay, I want to just tell you, this is an outstanding presentation, one of the best ever on this show, and we've had some really good ones from people at PFF and whatnot. This is one of the best in terms of really trying to dig into in some depth a very heady problem with regard to football game management and football strategy. And I appreciate you go into all the work on this, and I've really enjoyed just the many conversations we've had over the last few days about hey, what would be cool to see. And all that you've been able to produce has been really outstanding. Tell folks, if they want to talk football with you, how do they reach you?
Yeah, you can find me on Blue Sky. It's my username is Rohan_PANA. It looks like a very dead account because I'm not really posting stuff. I don't have like my own forum where I post football stuff. So, but if you reach out to me, want to talk stuff over, I always enjoy the problem solving of it. And now that there's no more Ravens games to watch for a while, I have a little more free time.
I'll make a little plug here for the Reddit community, which I think is outstanding. And that's where I met you, Rohan, originally, because I had made some comments over there and frankly was taking some heat, and you jumped in to talk about, why you thought this might be correct. And over there, what's your handle? So people know?
Yeah, on Reddit, it's the Clarinet Soloist, TheClarinetSoloist.
Okay. Well, very good. And I appreciate you doing that. Reddit community, by the way, is outstanding in terms of having a lot of thinkers. I will say there used to be dominated by Buck Allen memes. I think it's gotten away from a lot of that. And now the community is actually quite good over there, I think, and you get high level conversation certainly. But Rohan, I really appreciate you coming on. Other folks out there, if you have a question you'd like answered, please use #FilmStudyMailbag. I'm going to try and either answer that in a 1 to 3 minute video myself, or we'll get it on the appropriate show this off season. If you want to think about questions coming up, we're doing a detailed reviews of each position group. So if you have questions you want to talk about for those, please throw them in there specifically in terms of roster strategy for next year. Rohan, I want to thank you again for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And as a longtime listener, it's kind of been a dream come true as well. So it's been fun.
Well, appreciate you saying that. And we'll talk to you next time on Film Study.